Good afternoon, greater Philadelphia area. This is Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. I'm Tom Toole. She's Sarah Tymon. We both work at the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX Main Line, the number one RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania since 2018. And we have got some very interesting topics to talk about today. We're going to get to Gary Keller telling everyone the easy deals are dead. I mean, welcome to the party, Gary. I don't know where he's been the past 12, 24 months, but there's some relevant content there. Jeff Bezos, the Amazon CEO, wrote his final shareholder letter with some great advice in there. I don't think it was intended for agents, but we're going to look at it that way anyway. Compass is continuing to call out NAR, and NAR finally got rid of Realtor Magazine. I know you're probably a big avid reader of that one.
I do. I get it.
Yeah, I get it too. And I throw it out, which is probably why they got rid of it. But first, we're going to be talking about Danielle Hale, the chief economist of Realtor.com. I got the chance to interview her and connect with her a couple times, and she had this script she gave her neighbor. We're going to break that down next about waiting to buy and then what government job cuts could do in light of everything happening at the federal level. So if you get some value out of this, you'll like what you hear, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and if you want to schedule a call with our team, and Sarah specifically, we're working on some stuff for some of our listeners right now. Very exciting. You can do that with the link in the comments. So Danielle Hale, I don't know if you have the chance for all our listeners to follow her stuff. It's Realtor.com/research. She's the chief economist at Realtor.com, and very, very insightful. I think one of the more level-headed people that's an economist. Like, it's not these hot takes. Logan Mohtashami makes all these predictions. She's pretty even keel, which I appreciate. And we had her on the Knowledge Brokers podcast last week. And the interesting thing was she started talking about what she said to her neighbor. And I want to just read this to you, Sarah, and get your reaction. So I guess her neighbor is thinking about making a move. And Danielle was the mother of twins, so they recently moved a couple years ago. And the neighbor's hesitant about buying due to uncertainty in the market. Okay. Does this sound familiar?
Certainly.
All the time, right? So she basically said, in short, if you find the right home, go for it. But the conversation was pretty in-depth. So here's exactly what she said. I want to get your reaction. So we're seeing inventory grow in many parts of the country, but not everywhere in the Northeast. We are still seeing it lag behind. We're seeing more building in the South and the West. And so that is making a difference with inventory. And prices are determined by market forces, supply and demand. So if you have supply that outpaces demand, you're likely to see some price softening. And the opposite is true. Where demand outpaces supply, you're going to see prices go up. You want to look at national numbers to understand the broader context, but what really matters is what's happening in your market. And we're going to see some different trends depending on where people are already. When we look at these national numbers, we track inventory more than sales at Realtor.com. And what we have found is that prices have essentially already softened when we're looking at listings. And that's because we're seeing more listings that are smaller and in those lower price points and in geographies where real estate is generally more affordable. So what do you think about that? I mean, that breakdown there by Danielle.
Yeah, I mean, I think it touches on a lot of things that we talk about here where, yes, looking at national numbers and looking at like broader things is relevant to some degree. But what really matters is what's going on in your local market and with you.
I think the last part there is so important. So when you say with you, what does that mean to consumers? Because I think that, I mean, they may not interpret that the right way. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So what's going on with your life? What is bringing about the need for this move? How tight is not tight, but like the property that you're looking for? Like, what are the specifics of it? How many of them are out there? Is it a unicorn? Is it something that like we're, pretty consistently seeing something that checks a decent amount of the boxes? Or is it something that when it comes up, it's kind of a rarity and you need to take advantage of that?
I think that last part is so important. And you see a lot of people transact this way. I mean, you joke around, and I don't have any expectation of an immediate transaction with clients.
Right.
That's also why you're a great agent, because the people that are looking for now business, it's like when you're trying to lose weight and you're trying to like take a pill to lose weight instead of build like healthy habits. And that's one example. So there's those things come up, and it could be 6 months, it could be 8 months, it could be 2 years in some cases. There's a client we're working on who we're meeting with in March. I met with him in 2016.
Right.
That was 9 years ago at this point, right? And so...
And I would say even for the people that are very motivated and they're like ready to do something and the finances are there and stuff, very rarely is it under 3 months that you're getting under contract. Like, I don't know if that's just me or like what happens, but like even for the people who are like, I'm ready to do this, let's go, we're talking regularly, it takes time for them to like get out there and start looking and then to find the right one. And then you might not get the first offer that you wrote. So like even for those motivated people, it's very normal to be at least 3 months before getting under contract. So then if you've got somebody that's like, yeah, if the right thing, a year easily, like easily.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I can think I've sold thousands of homes. I can think of 2 times where someone bought like the first home they looked at.
I can think of one.
Yeah, and I mean that, and you know, it was more likely to happen like 2020 to like 2023. That would happen for sure, and that's how you build a sustainable real estate business. But it's also how you build trust with consumers, because if you're trying to just jam home deals all the time,
oh yeah, I
mean that would not be appealing to me.
No.
Can you imagine if like you meet a financial advisor or someone like that and they're just saying, all right, well, we got to do all this stuff right now. And it's like, wait a minute here. These are big financial decisions. And I think that's where, you know, building that relationship and trust are really important. So I love your thought process here. And then I also, like a lot of agents, they get frustrated about people saying like, I got ghosted, or they never, you know when that happens? When they're trying to close stuff right away instead of build a relationship with somebody.
Right. Yeah.
Most of the clients you have very strong relationships with.
Yeah. And I mean, that's not to say that I don't get ghosted ever, but usually those are just people
you're not going to close
like,
them all, but
right. But yeah, like it's not you can feel it if it's, okay, you only care about your sale, you know? Like you can feel that.
Commission breath is real, for sure. And unfortunately, a lot of agents, that is what they care about. So they don't have that long view. So I love that advice. Danielle's got more here. So she talked about supplies tight, home prices in D.C. are going to continue to rise. All that stuff is right there. Then she talked about timing the purchase. And Sarah, you're going to love this one. So she's emphasized that no one can predict the future with certainty, but for her neighbor's situation, wanting a bigger home and planning to stay in D.C. long term, buying now probably makes sense. And she goes on to say, I think there are always reasons to be uncertain in the housing market. My advice to them is to keep their eyes open. I know their context and that they are ready for a bigger place. It's not absolutely essential, but they're ready for it. So my advice is keep your eyes open, and when you see the home that is a good fit, go for it.
Right. And I think it's hard to draw that line between don't overthink it and be smart. You know what I mean? Because these are huge decisions. You should not get caught up in it, rush into something where the payments are exceeding what you can afford, or where now, like if anything happens to the house, you're in a tight spot. But there's also a level of, unless if you've got a completely unlimited budget, there's always going to be something about the house that isn't exactly perfect and isn't exactly ideal. And in many cases, once you're in, it doesn't matter. Like either you're going to deal with it and you're going to make it what you want it to be, or you're going to kind of live with it until eventually you do something, or it turns out it's not that big of a deal. Because it's almost like when you're looking at it from the outside, like everything is like, oh my gosh, but there's this and there's that and there's this and there's that. When, you know, probably these people have been living in the home for a very long time. And like, you know, you have to kind of have like a balance there of accepting some of the stuff, but when the right place comes up, to kind of go for it.
Yeah, and I think her this is someone that doesn't sell real estate is saying this. Now, she studies the market, and there's a lot agents can learn from this, because her agenda is just to help people, right? And when you help people in this business, usually good things happen. Like I've got a couple folks that we're trying to help, and you know, there's sometimes I've helped people and you don't make anything. You spend a lot of time on it. There's other times where it moves pretty well and it can be lucrative. So
I think sometimes some of the most helpful that I've been are with deals that I'm actually not in. I've had like several family members over the years out of state, you know, do things where I could just be kind of like a soundboard and just kind of reiterate like, yes, that's right, or no, that's not. Or, you know, helping out clients where I've had like coworkers that are out of town, and it's almost easier when you're not as deep into it, or where anybody could even assume that there's like a commission breath there, because like you're not getting anything out of it other than giving advice. And sometimes in those cases, it's actually like the easiest to give good, solid advice.
That's happened to me before too, where people are asking me stuff, and I have a relative that is down in Florida, so he's asking me what's going on, who do I talk to? So I'll connect him to an agent, and he calls me anyway, and I'm like, this is a pretty obvious decision here, man, and I don't hold back, and I wouldn't anyway, even because I've worked with him on real estate transactions up this way, but it just doesn't. It makes it easier because you don't have any skin in the game.
Right. Yeah.
And there's also value to that for agents listening. I really want you to pay attention here, because if you can detach from the outcome, which is hard to do, and say, all right, looking at all this, here's the best option, when you can, and not worry that the sale's going to fall through.
Right.
Obviously, we work for a deal here. That's how you and I earn a living. But when you can tell people, hey, here's our options. Let me know what you decide. And you're realizing like this may or may not go. But understanding that, hey, I've got enough going on with my business that this isn't going to put me or my family out, which is where everyone should try to get to. That's when you give the best advice.
Oh, yeah. I feel like the only one that's like the thing that gets the hardest with that sometimes is when like, this is the right place for you. Like this is what you have to do to make it work. But yeah, no, absolutely. When you remove yourself from what's happening there and you just present the options and give honest advice, I mean, that's what you should be doing anyway. But that's where, and then the client at the end of the day, whatever happens, it's on them. You presented them with the different scenarios and they made their choice. They can't go back and be like, this is your fault.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times the real estate agent gets blamed for everything.
Well, sure,
the
but
mortgage company screws up. The title company screws up.
Yeah.
And it's, sometimes it's okay to take that. I mean, I'll take responsibility even when it's not my fault, just to diffuse the situation a little bit. So, so there's one more thing that came out from this conversation with Danielle, and then I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with the government right now, because I think a lot of people are stressed out about this. You've got a personal situation. I think this is actually very relevant, if you don't mind sharing.
Not at all.
This is how much prep we do. I just asked her right on air what to say. So there was, it's personalizing the decision. So, what we talked about is that, life circumstances outweigh rate concerns. That's been a big thing that a lot of, I think, move up buyers are thinking about right now. And we're at a 17% of all the people in the U.S. that have a mortgage on a home. They have a 6% rate or higher. And everyone else is lower than that. But the house doesn't get bigger. The kids get bigger. They take up more space. And that's the biggest challenge. I think that's the hardest buyer right now, is the one that has a low rate and they don't like their house.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So that's why that advice from Danielle of keeping your eyes peeled for opportunities, because those homes that are on the market like 14 days, or like the photos stink, or it's been on the, that's what you need to bring to the table as a real estate agent is, hey, here's some opportunities. I don't know if this is going to be for you, and that can go a long way as well, because the thing that usually holds people back, rates are there for sure, but we've seen that number jump up. It was 8% just 2 years ago, so it's almost doubled. It's they can't find the right opportunity to make the move worth their while in the first place.
Right.
I mean, are you feeling that with some of your clients right now? And when they do find that opportunity, it's like, they're going to move on it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it can fall into a couple different things. Either, why would, even if this house that I'm in isn't ideal, but like the rate is great, yada, 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 why would I leave this for something that like isn't checking most of the boxes? Like, so, right, like the right place hasn't come up, or they're really not that motivated. Like because there can always be reasons not to do something. So if you're not really in a spot, and that's not a bad thing to not be motivated. That's fine. If you're not motivated, you're not motivated. It's cool. But there's always, pick from the pile of reasons why different homes aren't going to work if you're not that motivated. There could be a million.
Well, and I think that's the difference is that, and then so many agents, they get stuck where they don't want to go out and like talk to a bunch of people. So they settle to work with the clients that they have out of fear of the phone or whatever their issue is. So instead of that, they make a decision to settle. Like they're avoiding lead generation or calling people, and they lean into, I'm just going to work with these people. They're motivated, but they're not that motivated, and they don't want to ask the right questions.
Right.
They're taking orders, and it's because they're either nervous in their skills, they don't have a strong appointment, or they don't have the right activity in their business to generate more business. And it's either one of those two. It's either activity or skills. There's nothing that really gets in the way. So that's why, you got to look at these numbers here and realize, like, there's going to be, it looks like it's going to be about the same number of transactions as last year is kind of what we're seeing right now. So you can either adjust your plan or just do the same thing and cross your fingers and hope something happens differently.
Right. I feel like one of the hardest ones to move past is somebody that you've put in so much time with, where you're like, no, but maybe they'll get the next. Like we've written 15 offers. We've looked at 100, like hundreds of places. Like, no, I need, like, I want this to, like, be worth it, But, like, at a certain point, not that you want to, like, just write off or fire somebody who is like actively looking and whatnot, but, like, that for me is one of the hardest ones, where you're just like, oh my gosh.
Well, and you got to look at how they change their behaviors. I think that's the thing. And then also too, and I know you're doing this, but some agents don't. They don't say things like, hey, we already tried this, it didn't work, let's try something different. And that's where having confidence in knowing what to do and knowing your craft and knowing the winning playbooks can go a long way, because a lot of agents are afraid to even, like, talk about that stuff. And at the same time, there are some people that just aren't that motivated. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So Danielle Hale, listen to that podcast. Great stuff. Awesome share. So I do want to talk about something Logan Monashami put together, because there's a question out there right now. Could the loss of jobs in government and withdrawal of funding from the economy increase the unemployment rate and surge in jobless claims, which would then probably have rates dip back down a little bit here? There's a lot of stress with government workers right now.
Yeah.
So do you mind sharing? I mean, we've talked about this. So, and I mean, nothing bad's happening, but there's a lot of changes going on.
Yeah. So my husband works for the Department of Defense. He's a federal employee. So a lot of these changes that have gone into effect recently, like, very much directly impact us. He's now somebody who he was working remotely, except, like, in the office once a week, or, for certain things would be going in, and now is supposed to be there 5 days a week, which, like, affects schedules and daycare and dog walks, which I know sounds like a minor thing, but it is a big thing. Like, making sure the dog gets, like, the different walks if, like, I'm out and,
yes,
whatnot.
It's a very real thing. I don't think that you're minimizing that. I mean, that shouldn't be minimized, because that's a lot of people feel that way, and dogs are part of the family, no matter what anyone says.
Oh, yeah. So, and then I think, like, just stress level wise for what's going on, like, for him, like, what's going on just at work in general, I think is just stressful.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, right? It's not just going back to work. I think there's some, and I don't know anything about the Department of Defense. From what I know, your husband, he's a very hard worker, like, follows through. Like, he would be, as someone who employs people, he'd be someone I'd be cool working remote, because he probably gets his stuff done. That's just my imagination. And from knowing him, and I've obviously gotten to know him over the years here. So and then you look at, okay, what's the impact, right? And then there's a couple different things here. Like, one, a lot of places are offering remote work right now, or at least some sort of hybrid schedule. So that's something that employers need to get real with. But what they're not talking about is some people are not going to go back. They're just going to say no. I don't know if he's seen that at all. I don't even know if you can talk about this. That's going to happen. And then also the increased cost of the household. Right. Like, I need more childcare now. I need a dog walker now. Like, all these things, like, all that stuff costs money. Daycare is expensive. Right. And there's some things here that this might have some unintended consequences with this call to work. I know the JP Morgan CEO basically said, like, if you don't want to come back to work, you're fired. Yeah. Now, that's a little bit of a different job than what your husband's doing. But these loss of jobs in the government sector, I think it's something to keep an eye on, because the government was one of the big people hiring folks last year when we saw the jobs numbers were maybe defying the odds and then getting adjusted and all that stuff. So, I mean, are like any of his coworkers feeling stressed? Like, I mean, tell me a little bit more. I mean, that's got to be tough.
Yeah. I think there is very much a level of stress there for, because also with a lot of these things, if you leave, they're not going to fill the positions again.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they're still, the work should, they're still going to expect all the work to be done and one time and whatnot. But with now, far fewer people and just the amount of time that it adds into the day for people being like, what's going on? What if this, the uncertainty creates a whole other just slew of not time wasting, because it's not time wasting to be worried and asking questions about what's happening, but work's not getting done because people are concerned about what does this policy do to us? What happens with this? What happens with that? So there's all this extra stuff going on. And I think it's just stressful.
Well, and you know what it does? It takes the focus away from getting the stuff done at work. I mean, we talk about time wasters all the time, right? And this is a very different one, and it's a reason to be. I'm not saying it's something that can be avoided, but it's taking the focus away from what actually needs to get done. I mean, if this was going on at our company, let's say, people wouldn't be focused on talking to people, going on appointments, and selling houses. They'd be focused on all this other stuff. So I don't think this should be taken lightly because if you look at some of the jobs numbers there, I mean, and this is this hits pretty close to home here. And it may have an effect on things. I mean, this could be maybe one of the reasons why some people are predicting rates are going to be lower later in the year. So it's something to keep an eye on. And certainly, if people are talking about it on Housing Wire and Logan Motoshami's putting it out there, it's a real concern. It's I don't think it's. And fortunately, you guys are in a good spot. I mean, you got some help and you've got some flexibility. I mean, but not everyone's going to be in that same spot.
Right.
I mean, imagine if you had to go to work every day and be at the office.
Right.
I mean, I was the, when my wife was a nurse, I was taking 3 kids to daycare. That was horrible. I mean, all 3 of them going at once and trying to get everyone there, and it would take forever. Yeah. And we had dogs on top of it. We had to hire a dog walker came into our, we went through all that stuff. So I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So this may have an impact on rates, is what some people are saying, because of the jobs numbers could go down. We do have some reports coming out this week. The main inflation report is going to be released, personal consumption index, and so we'll see what happens there. We got a couple Fed governors speaking this week, or Fed presidents, specifically the Logan of the Dallas Fed. He's talking today, actually. So we'll kind of see what happens here with rates. But I would really look at the jobless claims alert for the rest of the year, because I think that's the only thing that's going to really bring down rates to these numbers that people are talking about.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about Gary Keller saying easy deals are dead, the Jeff Bezos final shareholder letter, and some great advice agents can take into account next on Tool Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM.
For the best local mortgage service and great rates on your money, look no further than Mortgage America. We've been operating in the greater Philadelphia area for 40 years with a focus on smooth, easy access to home purchasing. Whether you're a first-time buyer, upsizing or downsizing, or just refinancing, we have programs for you. We also have closing cost assistance programs and access to subsidized interest rates. Pre-approval is free, no costs or commitments. To learn more, visit our website at mymortgageamerica.com or give us a call at 610-439-8000. We always have a person available to take your call with around-the-clock human service. Purchase your home with the personalized local service you find at Mortgage America.
Mortgage America is an equal housing lender. NMLS 128501.
I'm Tom Toole of the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX Main Line. If you're thinking of becoming a real estate agent in the greater Philly area, I have a special offer for you. Our team did $165 million of volume in 2021, making us the #1 RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania and a top 1% team nationally. Our agents love us because we offer them a successful career, a great life, and an unbeatable culture. Agents who've been with us for at least a year average 30-plus sales. Even our brand new agents average 17 to 24 sales a year. We offer proven systems and expert training. We help you set more appointments and sell more houses. Now, here's the offer. If you don't have a real estate license yet, we offer real estate scholarships so you can get one for free. Check it out at realestatescholarshipprogram.com or visit the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX Main Line at tomtoole.com. That's tomtoole.com. Get more out of your real estate career, and remember the real estate golden rule. You always get more when you work with Tom Toole.
When looking for a mortgage, you shouldn't have to sacrifice service to get a great rate. Visit the Sutera team at Cross Country Mortgage. We are your local Pennsylvania lending experts with loans that fit nearly any unique home buying situation, including first-time buyer options, low to no down payment options, and non-agency products. Get a free pre-approval now at ccm.com and search for us, the Suteras. That's S-U-T-E-R-A. At Cross Country Mortgage, when it's time to move, we're right behind you.
Equal housing opportunity, subject to credit approval, NMLS 3029, NMLS 1390366, MLSconsumeraccess.org.
Have you considered a career in real estate? Do you want control over your income? Whether you have a license or not, call us today at 610-692-6976 or visit TomToole.com. Join our team, the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX Main Line.
Welcome back to Tool Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. I'm Tom Toole. She's Sarah Tymon. We both work at the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX Mainline, the number one RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania since 2018. And we are talking about Gary Keller, Jeff Bezos, got some great advice for agents and some interesting quotes to pay attention to. Both very successful businessmen and thought leaders in the business space. And then at the end, we got Compass and NAR. They're just can't let it go. They can't do it. So if you get some value out of this or you like what you hear, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. And if you want to schedule a call with Sarah and talk about your real estate needs and what all this stuff means, you can do that with the link in the comments. So Gary Keller spoke last week at the Keller Williams Family Reunion, their big conference they have. Do you think anyone actually gets like anything done at these conferences? Like, what's your take on these things?
I don't like. What is it like? A bunch of like
real estate agents, yeah, and getting together and listening to some speakers.
I don't know. Like, it could be one where they leave all like pumped up and motivated, or it could be one where they leave all hungover.
Yeah. So I tend to agree with you. I got some intel. The reason I bring this up is a great client of mine, a friend also, anonymous, texts me and goes, "Hey, are you in Las Vegas? There's a ton of RE/MAX agents here." And this was today at 1:00.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And I've worked with his family a number of times. And he goes, "Yeah, it's nuts out here. There's a bunch of conventions, and a lot of the RE/MAX agents were doing some hard gambling last night." And I'm like, "Oh my God!" Like, I'm like, "So they're not going to the conference?" And he's like, "No, I didn't see many of them there." So I thought that was funny. Now this was not in Vegas. This is in Austin, I believe. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is that Gary Keller, he's one of my favorite people to follow. He doesn't talk often. I've listened to his podcast. Obviously, tremendously successful. Here was his quote that he came out and led off the event with. He said, "It's not getting progressively better right now," meaning the market. And what's interesting is that people keep expecting it to get progressively better. If you go back and look at history, when you get in a trough like this, it typically takes 3 to 4 years to get out of it. So if you were hoping we were kind of going to come on stage today and go, "It's over, it's all back, the easy deals are back," that's not true. My guess is that we have at least 2 more years, this year or next year. That's just a guess. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, when are there ever I know that in 2020 and 2021 we had low rates and things were moving quickly, but it wasn't necessarily easy. You had a ton of competition. Mm-hmm. So I mean, if you were the seller, it was phenomenal. Also like you had to maybe buy something, so trade off.
Sure.
But I think there's always challenges, and yeah, I don't think that there's. Are they saying easy, meaning like rates are going to be low and competition's not going to be there?
Yeah, I mean, I
don't know when that happens.
That's a great point, because there are some deals that are easy. Yeah. I mean, you meet someone, you hit it off with them right away, and there's not a lot of obstacles that come up.
Yeah,
I think what I imagine he's saying here is that there was this mindset, and I know we saw people think this way. Like, if someone wasn't ready to buy a home, they were like, "All right, I got to move on to the next person." It's the exact opposite of what we just talked about, right? Meanwhile, many of those agents are now out of the business, entirely. So I think what he's talking about is that it's going to be it's brutal putting some of these sales together. I think it's a slugfest. Like, I mean, you're getting knocked down. There's issues that come up. Inspections are now very common again, which they were up until 2020 when people wanted to get really aggressive. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of what he's talking about, but also that we're kind of on pace to see the same number of homes that are going to sell this year compared to last year. So I think he's also talking about that there is a lot of competition out there right now, for sure.
Yeah.
So he goes on to say that or other people at the conference said, give real estate time. It all works out. I mean, great. I don't think that's anything crazy there. There was something I shared. I don't know if you saw this. It was the competition index, and it was Jimmy Mackin. It's basically a theory. He's he runs listingleads.com, and he took the available number of home sales last year, all the homes that sold, divided by the number of agents, and the index went from like hovering in like the 30s to like over 100 the past 3 years. So there's also more people competing for less sales. I mean, do you feel like that's the case, or I mean, but you're probably like, you can't just look at it like, you got to look at where you're at in the business too, because I think there's also time you can take market share.
Yeah, I mean, I think where the more agents competing for fewer sales, the bigger impact there would take. 'Cause it's hard to say like, oh, well, if you weren't here, if you, Mr. Agent, weren't here, your client would be working with me. Well, did you like call them? Did you, how is it that you were getting them? You know, like I think the work you put in, regardless of the market, is what you're going to get out in terms of like getting new clients. Where I think it does affect things a bit is if there's an agent on the other side of a deal that doesn't really know what they're doing and makes it more difficult. And just the whole deal gets made more difficult by not having things get done properly, hitting deadlines, knowing what to do when, or how not to blow up a deal.
I totally agree with that. And you know where I think it also affects things is, especially when there's less transactions. I think really on the purchase side it gets frustrating when people are losing out on like multiple offers. We had Jordan from our team. Did you see this? She beat out 29 other offers on a condo yesterday. Like 29 offers.
Where was it?
It was in Glen Mills.
Okay, that's not the one that we lost.
No, it wasn't. It was, I know all this. It was not one that you lost. I mean, that was 29 offers would have been insane.
Yeah.
But I mean that makes it tough. Like you could write the best offer the buyer can write and still come in like 10th place.
Right. Yeah.
Now that's an outlier. I don't want to say we're seeing 29 offers all the time, but that's also a big win. And I think what people need to realize is that you've got to take your best shot every time you get a chance to. And I mean, you were talking about someone you were working on something with, and you had the whole conversation. They opted not to do all the things, but you had the conversation, right? So I think that's the mindset you need to have. You need to let people know all the options up front and educate them really aggressively, that rather than like tell them about it afterwards. I think that's where you can lose some clients.
Right. Yeah.
What's your strategy there with that? Because I think that's a dicey thing.
I think I usually try to prep it with the clients for, at the end of the day, like you need to like the home at the price that you paid for it. So it's not just about like securing it. It's about also being happy that you got it. So this is where, based off of whatever, blah, 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 I could see it going north of this. And then I'll talk about different ways that we could get there, whether it's by writing it just straight as the offer, whether we're using an escalation, and then, you know, I also talk about the two sides of the deal, which are pricing and terms. And then kind of like advising that this is where most likely it will go. Do you want to go there? And if they don't, you don't know what the other offers look like. So even if you know that there's offers in, I always recommend writing it, unless if it's something where you know that there is not a shot.
And an example of that would be, there's 10 offers in on a home and the buyer wants to come in 10% below the asking price.
Right.
And that's not even always like, don't take that literally here, because sometimes that's not always the case, but you've got to ask better questions as an agent. Right. Keep going.
Right. So, you know, I wrote 3 offers this weekend, and for each of them, one of them is new construction, so that's a little bit different. For the other 2, it's, you know, this is what our competition looks like. Both of them had offer deadlines, and it only just hit the market like a day or 2 before. So we know there's offers. We know that if they're setting an offer deadline, even if it's just one offer that's in, it's something that if nothing better comes up, they would take. So we need to like factor that in. And then, but yeah, I just kind of present them with, I leave the ball in their court. Like, I think this would get the house, but do you want the house for that? You know, and leave it up to them. And if they do, and like circumstances can be different for what you need to factor in for later, and yada, yada, yada. And ultimately, sometimes not getting the house is better.
Yeah, well, and I think that you have to look at that this is an example of what Gary Keller's talking about. Like, it's not easy to get. Like, you could find the ideal home. Someone wants it. They may not get it. You know,
Right.
they can't buy it even if they want to in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
And these competitive situations, because we're in, and again, our market's at a different spot than places around the country where we're in a lower inventory market. Florida, it's flooded with inventory. So it's totally different because now you got to manage all these buyers, and the buyers are. And I think that's actually a more difficult market because you got to manage all these buyers, but also manage all these sellers, and the sellers wonder what's going on.
Right.
So it's a lot of communication involved there. And the point is that with Gary's talk here, I just be looking at what did my business plan say at the beginning of the year? What's the stuff that I do that works? What does the data tell me? And let's just do more of that because your business is on track to be up dramatically from last year, right? We talked about that. I think we've seen a lot of people do that within our organization. So you can succeed in spite of the market.
Yeah.
But you got to know what you're doing and be ready to do the work.
Right.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about Jeff Bezos here. We got this other quote now. So there was a letter, the last shareholder letter that Jeff Bezos wrote as the CEO of Amazon. This was back in 2021, by the way. And what he said was, being yourself is worth it, but don't expect it to be easy or free. You'll have to put energy into it continuously. And, he goes on, there's this, long quote here. I'll spare reading that, but, he had like a final lesson, and there's a price to be different, right? And he didn't use it to talk about like profits or logistics. And he delivered a message that I think could resonate with a lot of, real estate agents, business leaders, entrepreneurs. And it's basically that you have to, staying unique takes work. And if you don't fight for it, you're going to blend into the background. And I think think about all the agents that just have the same game plan all the time. Mm-hmm. We talk about this all the time. Like, what are we doing differently? That's literally the crux of a lot of our appointments is here's how we're going to help you differently.
Right.
How has that worked out for you? Tell me about that, because you've been super coachable since we got to work together. And you are unapologetically yourself, Sarah. I don't think there's any question about that. I mean that in the best way, and so, has that, but it probably takes it's hard to do. Like, you can't always, it's easy to fall into the background.
Yeah. I think it's just keeping going and staying positive is pretty important in this business. And yeah, you can't just expect things to fall into your lap. So I don't know that answers the question, but you can't just be there and show up and be like, all right, where are my deals? Where's work at? They don't just come to you.
Well, yeah. And I think there's, Sharon Srivatsa put out this post. I did a video about it where it's the 4 different types of agents that are out there. Mm-hmm. So he talks about, and what you said is just so spot on. I got to see if I can pull this up here because there's really 4 different kinds of salespeople. And this is the people that kind of fall into the same thing. So the first one is where the heck is this? Got it. All right, perfect. So the first one is the freestyler, right? They wing it. They don't have a script. They don't have a process. Some months they win, some months they crash, and they blame the leads, the market, or the product, which is probably pretty fair to say. Then you got the dabblers. They try everything once. They do it once. That didn't work. Sorry.
Yeah.
They follow all the gurus and do all the learning.
Yeah.
But they don't implement anything of it, and they rely on effort over strategy. Mm-hmm. And they end up burning out because they're just I'm going to do this, but they don't stick with anything, or try to get better, get really good at one thing. Then you got the know-it-all. This is probably the worst one, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Early success makes these people cocky.
Right.
How many people can you think of that come to mind when you hear that, right?
Yeah.
Growth stops, but their confidence stays, and they figured it out until they didn't, and a market shift will leave them behind. We just talked about a lot of these agents that got out of the business over the past couple years. Mm-hmm. And then there's the Titans. They train daily. They master the fundamentals. They sell like pros, win like athletes, and they're quiet, but they're the top people in their business, and every year their business comes in the top 1%. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really good example of what you talked about there.
Right. Yeah, you have to do the things to be able to stick out and to be able to stay in the business.
Well, so you've gone through a lot of training on many different sales jobs, not just this, and that feeling when it clicks. Can you describe that for people? Because I don't think a lot of people understand that. Like, it's like, oh, I've been trained on this. I'm like, wow, this worked. And then it's like, what happens after that? Because I think that's where most people don't get to.
Yeah, it takes the scariness out of doing things because you're confident, because you know what you're talking about, and you know what, it's almost like exciting when people bring the objections that you're like, well,
it is exciting.
I know
will
that
tell
one.
you, I get it. That gets me pumped up.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I know what to say here.
Right. So, I think you feel confident. People can feel that, and then it just kind of carries over into your appointment.
Well, and then all of a sudden they're like, wow, this person knows what they're talking. Like it gives them confidence in you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's if you can't win someone over, they're never going to trust you when it comes time to have these tough conversations like you're talking about with offers or taking like the offer that's on the table. I think that's where, because sometimes you only get like one shot to sell these homes. Right. And, that confidence goes a long way. So I think that's pretty good stuff from Jeff Bezos. He talked about, he shared a passage. I never read this book, The Blind Watchmaker, which is a biography as a metaphor for success in business. And he basically said the world wants you to be typical, and it pulls at you. Don't let it happen. And then he talks about distinctiveness requires continuous effort, which I agree with. Complacency can be the enemy. And you got to pay a price for being different. And it's a price some people don't want to pay, which I thought was pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. Because if you want to be different, you really got to, like, it's not a one-time thing. Like, you got to be committed to it all the time. Mm-hmm. It's not easy. I mean, think about all the agents that aren't different and how, like, they just kind of go through, like, like sometimes I feel like I'm calling them at like 11 o'clock. They're just like waking up for the day. I mean, it's wild to me what goes on in this business.
Yeah. No, I know. And like with a lot of these different things, it's time is of the essence, like you have to be able to multitask or get something done when it needs to be done to get it in, and you just suck it up and you do it.
Well, and I think that's the hardest. Some people just don't want to suck it up, right? Yeah. I mean, if my bad day can be better than most people's good days, like you're winning. Like that's how you got to kind of think about it. And, consistency, it's always like people think it's just like the same thing every day. Consistency is like some days you barely got anything done, but you did a little bit of what you were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. Then other days you like crush it. And then some days it's like, all right, I got a little bit done. It's like imagine if you saw like all these glasses of water in front of you and somewhere like a quarter fill, somewhere all the way full. Like that's consistency, is doing it every day. Right. So I think that's what he's talking about here. And then I think exactly what we talked about. The average agent does this. Here's what we do. We have a script all developed around that. That's what you got to be talking to consumers about, because that's going to pique their interest. Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Hope everyone's pumped up after that little segment there. And we're going to come back and talk about Compass and NAR and Realtor Magazine and all sorts of stuff with our lovely National Association next on Tool Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM.
You shouldn't have to deal with all the red tape when getting your mortgage from a big or online bank. At Mortgage America, we have access to big bank money, but with the personalized and detailed service of a local bank. We are here in your community and ready to serve with fast settlements, low down payment options, and first-time homebuyer programs. Pre-approval is free, no costs or commitments. For more information, visit our website at mymortgageamerica.com or give us a call at 610-439-8000.
Mortgage America's equal housing lender. NMLS 128501.
When looking for a mortgage, you shouldn't have to sacrifice service to get a great rate. Visit the Sutera team at Cross Country Mortgage. We are your local Pennsylvania lending experts with loans that fit nearly any unique home buying situation, including first-time buyer options, low to no down payment options, and non-agency products. Get a free pre-approval now at ccm.com and search for us, the Suteras. That's S-U-T-E-R-A. At Cross Country Mortgage, when it's time to move, we're right behind you.
Equal housing opportunity, subject to credit approval, NMLS 3029, NMLS 1390366, MLSconsumeraccess.org.
The Tom Toole Sales Group is the #1 RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania with over $165 million in volume for 2021. I'm Tom Toole, and our team has achieved that kind of success by being a great place to work with and to work for. No one knows Greater Philly better than we do. We know real estate, but more importantly, we're real people. We hire the best agents, and we give them all the tools to succeed. Even our brand new agents sell 17 to 24 homes a year because our team delivers the best experience in real estate. Teams deliver a better experience than individuals, and we're a top 1% real estate team in the country. We call it AAA service. We're your advocate, ally, and advisor. Because this isn't a transaction to us. It's a relationship. If you're buying or selling a home, call the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX main line at 610-692-6976 or visit tomtoole.com. That's tomtoole.com. Sell your home for more, and remember the real estate golden rule. You always get more when you work with Tom Toole.
Have you considered a career in real estate? Do you want control over your income? Whether you have a license or not, call us today at 610-692-6976 or visit tomtoole.com. Join our team, the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX main line.
All right. Welcome back to Tool Time, Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM. I'm Tom Toole. She's Sarah Tymon. We both work at the Tom Toole Sales Group at RE/MAX main line, the number one RE/MAX team in Pennsylvania since 2018. And we are talking about Compass and NAR. They just won't let this go. Robert Refkin's on one here to talk about clear cooperation, NAR policies. They got rid of Realtor Magazine. So if you get some value out of this, make sure to subscribe. You want to talk to Sarah about clear cooperation, selling your home, anything like that, you can do that with the link in the comments. And please hit the bell for notifications. It would mean a lot to check us out every week. So this NAR clear cooperation thing is not going away. Personally, I feel like just to give people a choice, they can do whatever they want. It's their house. That's right. I know we're kind of on the same page here. So now Robert Refkin came out again, and he's on a crusade here. He's the CEO of Compass, where he said NAR rules artificially propped up the least experienced agents in the smallest brokerages, resulting in the number of agents in the U.S. increasing nearly 100% since 2000, while during the same time, the U.S. population only grew 20%, and the number of annual home sales declined by 20%. A little misleading because he's factoring in the last 2 years here. I think you got to look at all that. And basically what he's saying is that this NAR rule, it's to support agents instead of supporting consumers. What do you think about all this, Sarah?
So how is it supporting agents?
Well, so it's supporting inexperienced agents because they have access to everything, right?
Yeah.
And I think there is something to having an agent network or like knowing what's coming on the market. I mean,
I kind of like that when it's on there.
Well, we could talk about this, but I mean, so what do you think about that? I mean, do you believe what he's saying? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, like what caught my eye up here was where he said, I believe they don't want large brokerages and top agents to gain market share because it would result in less agents in the industry and less revenue from agent dues. So, like, I think it is frustrating that if the way that they're trying to get and retain agents is by saying that you have to be a member to be able to use, the different slides. Like if you're doing the clear cooperation policy, you have to be a member in order to get the home up. It kind of feels like you're being backed into a corner. So I don't really agree with that. But I do like having a place to go to that has most of the properties.
Well, I think there's something to this here because, what he's talking about, I think there is something that, and he talks about like you need to sign a buyer representation agreement before I can show you properties. We need to agree on compensation up front. I think that's a good conversation to be having right now because too many times people are like, I didn't know what I was signing. I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. So it's forcing that issue. So I don't agree with that because I think, unfortunately, I don't care if you're experienced or not. You got to remember, 13% of the agent population is going to be here in 5 years. Mm-hmm. So 87% you could argue are inexperienced because they're less than 5 years in the business. Yeah. So I think that there's something to that. I do like the transparency, and what's best for the seller is getting as many people interested as possible.
Right.
I mean, have you sold a for sale by owner before?
I got a buyer client into a for sale by owner and represented the buyer.
Yeah, and I mean, so I think, and I would argue that for the seller, which is good for your buyer, probably would have gotten more if they were on the market, right? I mean, I've had for sale by owners I've listed where we're raising the price or they had nobody looking and we get multiple offers in. Like this happens. It's documented. So when you don't put everything on the MLS, it actually costs people money. And there's an article about this here. In the past 2 years, the data so they know what they're talking about. Home sellers who avoided MLS left over $1 billion on the table. If they choose a private network listing over the MLS, the typical seller pocketed $4,975 less And in high-price markets like California, the number jumped to over 30,000 lost per home. It's a lot of money.
And that's like accounting for, like, that's after the agent fees. And
Yeah,
stuff
it's net.
like
Yeah, net fees. Yeah,
Right.
Or net proceeds. Excuse me.
Right. Yeah, I believe it.
Well, the data's there, right? And I think there's this, and so Jeremy Waxman, he's the CEO of Zillow. He came out and said, "Make no mistake, this practice is designed to benefit our participating brokerages' own bottom line as an attempt to double dip on commissions from both sides of the transaction within their brokerage." So he's talking about people that want to go private, and when it comes to at the expense of the seller, who is parting with what is often the biggest financial investment of their lifetime and not reaping the full benefit. So he's saying that it should be, exposed that way. I mean, I don't know why they just don't give people a choice. I don't understand this like forced rule, and then you got to pick a side here. Like, why can't you just let the seller decide? And maybe, we have enough disclosures as it is, right?
Right.
But maybe there's a disclosure like from NAR that says, all right, here's the benefits, here's the here's the reason to do it. What do you want to do?
Is Compass like known for having a lot of pocket listing? Like,
they have this Compass coming soon, so it's and he's he's saying that they're he talks about his stance on the clear cooperation policy. To be very clear, and one of the most damaging rules, according to Refkin, was this, which required listings to be entered into the MLS within one business day. And while marked as a consumer protection measure, he argues it did the opposite, stripping homeowners of the ability to test pricing strategies privately and increasing their risk of price reductions. And they have some internal data that supports that. And so what he's saying is... So
he's saying they would have wanted to privately market it off the MLS to test their number. Mm-hmm. And then if they don't get an offer at that, they would go to the MLS, but at an adjusted number where it isn't showing it as a price reduction.
This is all like hypothetical. Like, who knows if they're actually going to do that or not. What I'm clear on is there is a switch that gets flipped when you turn the lights on about a listing, right? Mm-hmm. Like all this, like when you even if when it goes from like coming soon to active in our MLS, you see much more activity come in for sure. And, I'm clear it's best for sellers if they want the best price. Now, some sellers, they just want an easy deal. Maybe there's some privacy questions. That's a little different. But the majority of sellers, I'm clear it's best to take this to the market. I don't understand this this rule. And, you can say that it takes, like, what's stopping these big brokerages and best agents from taking market share?
Right.
Like, just because they control all the listings? I mean, I there's ways to take market share right now, which, I think can be done. And I just wish they would just, like, get rid of this rule. Is just so, it's frustrating. Like, give people a choice.
Right.
Here's the rules. Here's the benefits. Maybe there's a disclosure involved, and let's just call it a day.
Right.
There's better things to talk about than this.
I agree.
So if you were running NAR, that's probably on your vision board, right?
Oh, of course.
Sarah Tymon, CEO of NAR. What would you do with this? If the decision was all yours.
I mean, I feel like given the amount of pushback that has been coming in for several years now, I think I would make the disclosures. And if the whole thing is that it's always supposed to be the seller that gets to decide what they're doing and that there's transparency there, you should transparently provide the pros and cons and then let the seller make the decision.
I just don't, this is a good example of, if I'm the CEO of a large company, I would take an opinion on this and kind of be done with it. And instead of fighting like this, you know what I'd be fighting for? Helping my agents sell more homes, how to sell more real estate. To me, it's another example of real estate agents and real estate companies talking about everything else, but let's go talk to some consumers. Let's go help them. Let's go sell some houses. And I think that this happens in a lot of industries. I don't know if you ever did you ever have to join another association before you got into real estate, or is this the first one?
No, this is the first one.
Okay. And I've never have either, but I think there's like these people that want to take on these like good causes and like fight the good fight and all that stuff. I just want our people on our team to make a lot of money and help a lot of folks and help consumers. I don't get the hang up here. And
right.
I mean, it does, it just becomes frustrating hearing all this back and forth.
Right. Yeah.
So we're going to leave it there. If you got some value out of today's show or you want to schedule a call with our team and Sarah specifically, check out the link in the comments. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. You want to follow Sarah. She's on she's on Instagram at Ty_Time, Apparently, we invented a new social network there. You can follow me at Tom Toole 3RD, and we'll be back next week on Toole Time Real Estate Radio on WWDB 860 AM.